Hello, everyone. I wanted to have a little bit of a preview for the modules that will be on exam 3. And I wanted to do this because they will be quite a bit different from the way we had addressed things on the first two exams. So I want you to have kind of the mindset of being ready for that as we get into this material. So this will be module 6, 7, and 8. Um, and module 7 and 8 will be combined into one module, and we'll talk about why that is here in a moment. And the things that we cover in these modules are starting to answer some of the why questions about chemistry. Unfortunately, we're covering it, I guess fortunately in some ways, we're covering it at a level where we don't completely answer all of this. And in fact, there's never a completely satisfactory answer for this if you get deep enough on it. But some of the questions I'm talking about here is, why does the periodic table work, right? We talked about it earlier, but why does it work that way? We'll learn a little bit about why that happens. We talked about, how compounds form in certain ways. Why does that happen? We can answer that question as well. Why are molecules shaped the way that they are? So these are some of the questions we can answer. Some of the things as we get into this, we're going to be skipping through. We're not going to get into as much detail on some of this material as your textbook does, especially with the quantum mechanics. And that is something, if you would like to know more about that, there will be a opportunity later in the semester to give presentations. So some of you might be giving presentations on, for example, quantum mechanics or molecular orbital theory, which is another big topic in here that we're skipping over. So we're going through this a little bit more rapidly because we're leaving some things out, and we're doing that so we have more space for the other things that are kind of more foundational, that are often challenging, like stoichiometry, which we spent quite a bit of time on already. Because we're leaving out some of this material, we're basically going to combine module 7 and 8 into one module. So as they exist as chapter 7 and 8 in your textbook, we will be looking at them as a single module in Canvas, and the quiz on that will be a little bit more extensive, but that is how we kind of get around leaving out some of that material. A big part of these three chapters is about understanding compounds. Chapter 6 is laying some details in terms of electrons to get to understanding what electrons are doing, and what electrons are doing is completely what's responsible for understanding what compounds are doing. We did already cover some of this, right? Because we have to know something about compounds in order to talk about them, which we've been doing for for several weeks now. So what we'll be seeing here is some of what we cover will end up being review from ideas that we had initially covered in modules 2 or 3. And we just sort of put it out there and asked you to accept that this is true for now. Now we'll go back through and say, well, this is why this is true. And so we can answer some of those questions a bit more. So some of this will be, a lot of this will be review. Some of it will be new. But we can get into a little bit more depth on this. So a few things about that as you're preparing for this. For the third exam, so the first two exams you were allowed to have a note card. You will not have that on the third exam. So these are ideas that you want to be able to kind of come up with. So there's no note card on the third exam. Also related to that, nomenclature will come up again. These chapters themselves don't talk about nomenclature, but once we understand why, hopefully the nomenclature aspect makes a bit more sense. And we did kind of go through that part pretty quickly earlier on. So the idea here is you had, on that first exam, you have the opportunity to, try it out with a note card. Here you're going to be doing it without the note card. So you might need to think a little bit about remembering some of those polyatomic ions, for example, so that you're able to use them well on this third exam. Also, and this might be good news or might be bad news, there will be fewer calculations than there were on the first two exams. There will be some calculations, especially in Module 6. There is some very kind of detailed math. We'll be skipping some of that, but there will still be some amount of calculation. So it's not a completely, you will still need your calculator for this exam, but there will be less. So this could be good news if the math was something that you felt was holding you back early on. So this exam, that will be less of a thing than it was on the first two. However, for some of you, if you feel like you have really good math skills, you may have been able to do a lot of the things on the first two exams based solely on your math skills as opposed to your chemistry knowledge. So if that is you, if you feel like you know math fairly well, this is where you have to know some chemistry. So I wanted to talk a little bit about a few things to expect going into these upcoming modules so that you're ready for kind of how the third exam will be a little bit different in the way it's kind of the content and the way it's presented to you than the first two were.